I am, and I'm sure just like everyone else, I am so thrilled that Emily is here. Wow, because I had not read the book. I was not aware of it. And, aside from, of course, it being fascinating, the scholarship, yay for the scholarship because
Mhm.
it's very thorough and
Thank you.
fun and
Thank
fun.
you. Thank
And
you.
if that topic can be fun, but it's illuminating. Maybe I should use that. So, if you would just like to start and sort of give us some ideas, and I'm sure everybody has questions and more folks will jump on too.
Sure. I am from Oak Park, Illinois, which is where Helen Cerise, the attorney that saved Sabella, is from. And I found her story in a book I got from the Oak Park Public Library called Girls of Murder City by Douglas Perry. It's a fantastic book, but the stars of it are really Belva and Beulah and the women who inspired the play Chicago. I'd seen the picture of Sabella and read how she was treated and how the newspapers described her. I didn't think she was ugly. I didn't think she was haggard. I thought she looked really scared. And so from that picture really launched my study into Sabella. It was a little fortuitous because I knew I wanted to write narrative nonfiction, and I knew I wanted my first book to be in Chicago and to be Italian American. I like to stay in my wheelhouse pretty much. Usually, with all my books, there'll be something that is somehow related to something from my life. So, my second book was on the Navy nurse POWs of World War II. My grandpa had been in the South Pacific in the Medical Corps in World War II. So, I kind of, grew up hearing that. And so this was just something that really, once I began researching the case, I was completely shocked at what they were able to do to her and how successful they almost were. And that to the end, that Milton Smith, his obituary was that he almost got her, is really just insane. So that's the background of it. I started, I think, writing the book in I began researching in 2014 or 2015, and then it came out in uh, 2017.
Have questions right off the top, or comments about what they've read?
I'm connected from Italy, and Emily probably doesn't know that. But, here we have continuous news about women murdering their infants, which
Mm,
is a shocking thing.
hmm.
And I was doing, I just looked up on the internet. There are 45 women in the United States still on death row. And all over the states, many, if not the majority of these women have murdered, killed their infants.
Hmm.
And immediately, what I thought of is, well, there is a syndrome, it's the postpartum syndrome,
Hmm.
which is also
Yes.
connected to depression. And there is more and more research about this. Um, Sabella herself had many children, and she married early, and then she was a foreigner in the United States, not even know what people were saying to her.
Hmm.
Um, she didn't do what people thought that she did do because she was the ugly prey.
Hmm.
But, Emily, have you ever considered that women, besides
Hmm.
Sabella herself, that are murdering their children more and more are not just murderers, but they might be affected by that postpartum syndrome or that depression thing? Because is it just a case that more women in Italy, it is shocking, that children are at earlier ages, and we get these news, and Italians are notorious for, we are notorious for how we love our children and keep our families. What's going on? Is this arouse your curiosity in the
Is
case of, Sabella? It's just the curious.
so I put into the chat a story I wrote for The Atlantic. So if you click on that link and you go to The Atlantic, it has my collection of stories, and it is going to be the third one down, and it's called When Giving Birth Leads to Psychosis and then to Infanticide, and that came out in 2018. And that is actually from in the state of Illinois, where I'm located. I'm in this, and I heard you say you spent time in the Chicago area, or you grew up
Yes,
here.
I grew
Okay.
up there, from 1959 to 1972 was a long time ago, even before you were born. Yes, I did grow up in my kind of town there, Chicago, yes.
So in Chicago, in Cook County, you'll see this case basically in the Atlantic. It tells two stories to kind of bring the topic to life. And the first is of a young woman in the 1920s who killed during postpartum psychosis. At least it is believed that she killed her baby. I was in very long contact with her granddaughter, because long story short, at the time, they would send you to the Illinois, the mental institution, the asylum, and you were there until you were healed, which postpartum psychosis responds quite well to treatment, including electric shock therapy. So this poor young woman, um, she was in a terrible situation. I explained it in the story. And then she was released, and she went on. Obviously, she never had any more children, but she went on to live a productive life. She moved home to Michigan, where she was from. The granddaughter had such fond memories of her, and they just really considered it a family tragedy. Now, I give an example of a woman who did so. I think this ran in 2018. It was prior to right around that time, maybe 2016, she was sentenced. It's a horrible thing that she did. It's detailed but this was a person with profound mental illness who was not getting help, and she truly believed on the day she killed her baby that like demons were coming for him. And always, we get into the issue of Andrea Yates is in there. There's a documentary on her now where these women are. It's like not a surprise to anybody. These are really profoundly ill women, and it happens, and you know, they it's not a surprise, yet nobody else is held accountable, right? For so long story short, in Illinois, the law changed, so it is now, it's a murder conviction. There was a law that passed in Illinois around 2018 that now the judges can consider postpartum psychosis during sentencing, but that's really it. It's still, it's criminal. It's not going to result. So I know this doesn't have much to do with Sabella Nitti because, Sabella Nitti didn't kill her husband, right? It was either, in my opinion, Francesco Nitti simply walked away from his family, or I've read an account by a legal scholar who believes that the second son, Michael, did it. Um, and uh, we just don't know, but we do know that it wasn't Sabella Nitti, and we know that Sheriff Dasso worked so hard to incriminate her on the most ridiculous things. But to answer your question, it has been a research or interest of mine in the past. And so if you are able to, usually with the Atlantic, you can click on three stories before you hit the paywall. So if you do have an opportunity to read it, not much has changed in the US since then. Um, but that's where we're at.
Thank you very much, Emily. That was very nice of you. Thank you. Your
Nice.
answer was very, very unexpected because I didn't know that you had written a book like this, and my curiosity is aroused from the news. Women. Oh, look, she killed her infant. Look, she killed her infant, and nobody's asking themselves here. We're talking about these grand juries, if that woman, not that she was innocent of anything, but might have had some kind of mental problems.
Sure.
And, and that was a doubt that I had on my own. But then again, reading all these stories from the United States, look at all those cases. I
Mhm.
mean, I think that the judges should also consider, case study and look what's happening, look at what's happening in the world actually here, because, open up their minds because, this idea of equal opportunities, okay, sure. I mean, if any woman commits a crime, she is equally subject to punishment or, prison or whatever, hopefully not the death penalty. But but there is a difference, isn't there? Women give birth, and
Mhm.
it's traumatic to give birth,
Mhm.
isn't it?
Mhm.
And what
Mhm.
happens to do all women maintain their sanity? Or what about the past of these women? Because if you look at their stories, many of those in the United States, they have had traumatic, childhoods. In
Mhm.
within the family or some kind of violence on them, either
Mhm.
physical abuse or mental abuse or poverty itself, or and
Well, one thing you said there that really sparked my interest is, the penalties that women face. We know currently, right now, in the U.S. justice system, that when Black women are sentenced, they receive harsher sentences than their white counterparts. Which interesting in Sabella's case is at the time in 1920s Chicago, that was really the space that was occupied by Italian Americans. There's a very short history in our collective memory, but as the book goes into detail, there's a tremendous amount of racism towards Italian Americans in the 1920s. They weren't considered white, and they really had or people who were seeking to be racist against Italian Americans had the backing of the highest authority. And not to repeat the book because you've already read it, but the mayor of Chicago saying that, or the police chief, he'd rather hire a monkey than an Italian. Even Jane Addams saying she knew a few good Italians. At the time, statistically in the 1920s, it was not the best decade for Italian Americans in Chicago. Italian Americans were the responsible for most of the criminality statistically at the time. And so what you see of this book, I would grab it off my bookshelf and show you right now, but at risk of moving, I have a chocolate brown chihuahua on my lap, and her name is Sophia. Her name is Sophia Lucia Lucchesi. She's a bad girl. I don't want to disrupt her. She'll just start barking, and then I actually have another one right here. This is Gabriella. As
oh,
so
hello
I don't want her to set
Gabriella.
up. I
Oh,
don't
we
want
get
her.
it. We get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would grab it off my shelf, but what's really interesting, the book is called May God Have Mercy on Your Soul. And by and large, it's just an index of every execution in Cook County up into a
Mm.
particular time.
Wow.
And so you see multiple things changing, right? You see the method of
Mm.
which they used goes from hanging to the electric chair, and this book came out before lethal injection. But of course, now in Illinois, we no longer have the death penalty, so that it stops. But you also see the people, initially it's German, then it's Irish, and then it's
Mhm.
Italian, and eventually it transitioned from Italian to African American. And what's interesting is I actually did have a chapter. Sabella, I think, was supposed to be the 94th person to ever be executed in Cook County, and Pietro Crudele would have been 95th. Who the people were that essentially replaced them on the gallows, and it was two black men. So my editor cut it, which is fine. I get it. I know as a reader sometimes when you're in the midst of action, it's hard to pause and be like, and now let's do backstory. But they were involved in a robbery gone wrong. Although their trial was like 3 hours long, So you just don't know, particularly because one of them was a Pullman uh,
Oh, Pullman
right,
Porter. Yeah.
that was a good job,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know? And so I remember when the first reaction I had when I got that trial transcript was that he was a Pullman porter. And I actually said out loud, do they think I'm stupid to believe that they probably did it? And so, that it would be very highly unlikely that a Pullman porter that was considered a good job would give up, would be also robbing on the side. Um, and they maintained their innocence and said they didn't have a fair trial. But we're also extremely resigned to it. Sabella would have been the first woman in Cook County to be executed, and her criminal the actual sentence was upheld, and that was the first time. There had been another woman, she was mixed race, black and white, and I think it was 1890s. She was sentenced to be executed at the gallows, and the judge did not uphold the sentence, and he suffered, sentenced her to like 20 years in prison or something like that. With Judge David, um, he upheld it. He upheld it. I mean, it was really going to happen. And of course, then, they did it on Columbus Day, or wanted to do it on
Yeah,
Columbus
like
Day
Columbus
with,
Day, which was
it's like,
ah,
that's like the Italians of Americans have always considered it their day. And it was just like kind of sticking it to them. Like he knew what he was doing. It's funny, he looks so nice in pictures, doesn't he? Like if you go through the pictures,
yeah.
he looks like he'd be nice, but no, no, he's not. No. Um,
Well, I thought, and that's what there were points, not always, but I was really struck with, and it becomes a bigger question, but how things really have not changed.
very
That
little, very
that
little.
we can we can read these things and we can place our family members in a time, or um we can think of contemporary times and still see. There was a great comment about that was it was something that you had written, or I don't, but that it was to the fact that abuse of people who were arrested was very common at the time. And I'm
Hmm.
like, yeah, well, that didn't change much.
Oh, the goldfish chapter.
So we're doing both things. We're fielding questions and we're also just talking about ideas related to what we read.
Yeah, imaging the other as ugly
Hmm.
is, I think, necessary in terms of hatred and discrimination. If the other is ugly and does not have the same uh, style of beauty or beauty values that we have, then they are de facto unequal and inferior.
Very much so. I mean, we see it as like just an important part of stigma communication. We see it as a way for people to be able to develop a sense that they need to be protected from the other person, and that it's by being hateful and violent and vicious that they're somehow providing a service to themselves and people like them.
Mhm.
Do you think that in any way, the fact, because we know this now when people are in court, that they definitely are cleaned up, whatever that can mean. Do you think that that made a difference at all? Because obviously, this next group of people that became involved in the case were really, I mean, they were excellent, they were excellent and they were quick, but there also was this understanding about how women in general are viewed. And it was stated clearly at the end of the book. And I'm wondering if, because it seemed like obviously there was such a strong case, do you think that in some ways the way that she looked at the end possibly did affect her, also the charges being dropped?
I think it had a huge, I think it was. The team of six was really started able to pile on kind of these layers of a defense. And the first thing was when the most important thing was getting the Illinois Supreme Court to order a new trial and to say you cannot have the nonsense evidence from the first trial. And
Yeah.
given
Yeah.
that there's no witness, there's no motive, we don't even know if that was Francesco Nitti in that catch basin.
Right.
So what they relied on in the first trial was really playing to the stigma. And so that was really the second thing they did was they took away that opportunity. They really cleaned her up, had her learn English. Um, and we find that Sabella was really an intelligent person. She
Mhm.
learned English without the benefit of knowing how to read or write, which means she didn't have phonetics to rely on. That's not easy to do. Um, and then she herself began learning to read and write. They were, clearly worked on her mannerisms and then just made her look familiar, which, going back to Dominic's comment on
Mhm.
to other someone and to make them ugly and to make them animalistic is such a key feature in hatred. And so really what they did is they took it away. They made her familiar. They made her look like their neighbor, their Italian American neighbor, but their neighbor.
Right. Yeah. And
Uh,
even then, as an assimilation, a quality of assimilation.
yeah. And so Helen Cerise was a very smart woman, and she was so
Mhm.
smart because she did not hide what she was doing. This was like she let everybody know this is what I'm doing. And I think that served as a criticism, a very open criticism that they'd intentionally, convicted a woman because she couldn't fight back and because it was very easy to play to the stigma and play to the bias.
This definitely seems like a book. Initially, as the Italian American Book Club, right, that we're looking at this from an Italian American viewpoint. But
Mhm.
as I got into the book, it's such a gender studies issue. It's
Yeah,
hugely, I mean, it's so much about women, so
it
much
really
about
is.
women.
Yeah, I think you're right. You're the first person to say that to me. I think you're right. Um, and it's interesting. I can't say that I particular, my PhD is in communication. I'm interested in message framing. I'm interested in media framing. I'm interested in stigma communication. Um, and so I have not done a lot of gender studies. Um, so that's interesting because I think you're right. I think you're right.
Because even as it, and it's obviously it's written so beautifully, and
Thank you.
there were these literal there blocks, right? That as I was reading, I felt like I was hitting these blocks,
Hmm.
and when I was hitting the blocks, it had a male orientation,
Hmm.
and it was punitive. And
Hmm. Hmm.
then there were points where I felt that I had access to certain chapters, like I could, and those were the women. And I just thought it was,
Yes.
that not that it was intentional, but that there's something about the way we collectively frame things
Hmm.
that they have a male sort of a male presence or a female presence, and the chapters had that.
It's interesting you say that because I did intentionally, when Helen Cerise is introduced,
Oh
Okay.
man.
I did actually try to change the tone of the actual book in terms of like the rhythm, the flow. I almost wanted every time it involved her for it to have a bit more of an upbeat quality.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because she was so young at the time. She was like 22, 23 years old. Um,
Wow.
she, her being from where I'm from, I felt like it was just very easy to go retrace her steps. And then I actually got to meet her family, and I got to meet her great niece, shared with me some of her favorite poetry books, and she gave them to me as a gift. Um,
Ah,
s- so this is uh, Anna St. Vincent Millay was her favorite. So she gave these to me as a gift, and I'm really glad to have them.
any female poets in there? Because sometimes, right, considering the time, women, I I would offer, sometimes acted on things, but were definitely not thinking of it as a feminist
Mhm,
agenda,
mhm.
right? They were just doing it. And so I'm wondering if she was looking at other women in that were in the incarceration system. As a lawyer, obviously, she was one of the very few at the time. And so was she looking at other women as role models that she could work with? Or did she actually, which is not unusual, have a lot of strong men role
You know,
models?
she's interesting. Her parents were from Sicily, and they changed their last name. They wanted it to sound like the color. And they experienced tremendous
Uh,
hostility when they moved to Oak Park, for being Italian American.
oh,
And her
I hate
mom
it. Yeah.
insisted that they were educated, absolutely insisted on it. So it is interesting you asked because it's this, yeah, oh, look, here's her, she wrote her name in it and her address,
Oh,
and
there she
yeah, it
is.
is. I love that. But this Edna St. Vincent Millay was, I mean, she was really bohemian. And so in her poetry, she has just like a lot of kind of this like bohemian notion of like being busy, being free. Um,
Hmm.
so I opened to it. I loved this. I've always loved this. It's first fig, my candle burns at both ends. It will not last the night. But ah, my foes and oh, my friends, it gives a lovely light. And so it's
Mm.
about kind of like, there's other ones in there. Kind of like they loved
Huh.
this notion, these bohemians in New York in the 1920s of being like busy and so you see her definitely admiring women like that.
Live,
Um,
live, 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 live.
Yeah.
exactly. Yes, exactly. So this is from 1922. This is yeah. So I wanted to actually write a kind of a spin-off book on her and aim
That's
it
great.
towards like juvenile readers, and I didn't really get interest in it. I'm still mad.
Yeah, well, we've got a profile in Italian Women in Chicago, Volume 2. And of course, she has a role in the trial of the ugly prey. And uh, yeah, she deserves probably more uh, attention. The the Justinian Society is always happy when we parade her up there as the first woman to be a member of the group, but uh, she sort of went her own way and she had her own career. Uh,
Mhm.
didn't become part of a big law firm or anything, but had her own business and her own. I think she was she elected official
Mhm.
part while,
She
yeah.
was a magistrate. She was the justice of the peace.
Yeah.
So she was really quite busy because she did a lot of like they'd come to her, midnight to get a warrant signed or something like that. So she was really quite busy. She worked her full life. Saw one letter where they gave me just access to her letters. They were so generous. And she said she was busier in her 70s than she was in her 20s.
Mhm. I know that.
You knew that one?
No, I
I
mean,
think
I know that experience.
you know the experience. Good. Well, I'll have something to look forward to. She also referred to herself as being very glamorous in her 50s, and I'm beginning to push down looking at my 50th birthday. So I'm thinking those will be my glamour years, thanks to Helen Cerise.
Yeah. Okay.
Folks, anything else? Other questions, ideas, thoughts?
I was thinking, Jenny, the role of dialect, which I was, and Dominic knows, is dear to me. I'm sure that our grandparents essentially spoke dialect and not the standard Italian language,
Mhm.
whichever it could be. Poor Sabella couldn't speak the standard Italian language because she wasn't educated and because dialects were not revalued as they are today, which is a big issue now for the scholars. And Sabella could not even speak to anybody, and who could understand that Barese dialect? I mean, I come from Salerno. I don't understand the Barese dialect, and Bari's not really that far from here. And plus, it's in Italy. And Sicilian dialects, my grandparents on my father's side came from Sicily. And one thing is being in Palermo area. The other thing would be like being from Enna, Nicosia, like my grandparents, where the dialect is very French-like. Okay, because of the Norman period there in Nicosia, which contrasted with the other period, more of Arabic nature. Now, is there any consideration about, uh, the role of, regionalisms? Here we call them regionalisms. In your case, Emily, I mean, did this strike you when you wrote the book that poor Sabella couldn't communicate? Well, she eventually learned English, which is important. Even now in Italy, the big thing with I was a principal in my later years of my job. I have retired. Um, it's been 3 years now. The big thing was learning Italian, no? Ital due, because of all these foreigners coming in. So you have to learn the standard Italian language. And still, like many foreigners are going to regions, even like Campania, like here in Naples, they would speak Neapolitan. So besides the standard Italian language, in order to communicate, you know, with people, you'd have to know something about the dialect. When you were writing this book, did you, Emily, consider the difficulties of a poor woman like Sabella being uprooted, coming from Italy, coming from one of the poorest areas of the body area, being uneducated, not knowing the standard Italian language? The Genovese was speaking to her probably in the standard Italian educated language, or the Genovese, the Ligurian dialect, like, two foreigners speaking to each other.
Yeah, no,
How
so
could she have been helped
it
by
was
being, yeah.
it was interesting to me in my research. I mean, I had a general sense that the dialects were going to be distinct. I knew that, but what was very interesting to me was being able to connect with the Oxford linguist. Who I believe I thank him um, in my acknowledgments and asking him how profoundly different. I told him, where everybody came from and what their dialects would have been. And he was phenomenally fascinating. There was one of them, I think Romano was Southern Italian, but the Oxford linguist told me, oh, no, no, that dialect is imported from the north, and that particular dialect is going to be more northern. So it's actually It's not going to work out at all. But he was the one who said it is as profound as an English and a Dutch speaker trying to communicate, in which, sure, you're going to hit up the right word now and then, but it's not going to be easy. And then, of course, I think we all have to factor in um, accents, which I didn't really get into in the book because he didn't bring it up. But uh, I know I have a pretty heavy Chicago accent. I have a Great Lakes vowel switch, right? So
Hmm.
I know I'm not easy if you're,
Great
in
Lakes.
Australia, you might not find me to be particularly easy to understand. If you're like I find Scots hard to understand, don't you? If you want to watch All Creatures Great and Small on PBS, you got to put on the the closed captioning. So I didn't get into accents. That would have been interesting, but he just gave me everything I needed to know, which is this woman truly did not understand. They didn't understand her, and she really needed help that she was not receiving.
And that I found because I noticed the mention of Potenza. I'm Potenza centric because that's where my grandparents were from. But when we would be at the kitchen table and I would hear conversations, and I was really young, but I would hear them talk about certain people being Barese. And so when you just mentioned that about certain Southern dialects coming from the North,
Mhm.
that would explain some of our kitchen table conversations, which I obviously could not understand completely, but I would hear these references
Mhm.
and they would argue. They would argue about what the dialects were from different people and how come they had this dialect, but they were really from here. So that actually is really illuminating to me
Yeah,
because you
he,
mentioned
yeah.
Romano was I think it was Romano who was put from Potenza. Yeah.
I think that was it. And then obviously Milton Smith was not Italian. And then Dasso
Yeah.
was the other one who I looked up.
Yeah.
But and then of course Helen Suriso, her family being Sicilian,
Zillion.
that's
Yeah.
going to be distinct, but at least she knew it. And I
Mhm.
think that is really such a key component. Is that she knew it. She knew what she was dealing with, and she didn't make assumptions, and which is not what the others did.
Yeah. And maybe that did come from different levels of education.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think too. Like Dasso just never wanted to admit what he didn't know.
That's true too. Yeah.
And
Yeah, and there is that.
yeah. 1 second. There's a little dog coming up again. Hold on
That's
one
okay.
second.
Because
You
I'm
can
minding my cats while you're
you,
doing that. So
you
yeah.
can do it. They had to,
Yeah.
my husband came home, so they had to bark and jump down and go get
Yeah.
him.
Uh,
Right.
does anyone know when laws were passed that they have to provide translators? Or
This is a good question.
they wouldn't get
Yeah.
away with that now?
No, no. Um,
And I just wondered, I mean, that's about the time women had a long way to go. That's about the time they got the vote, you know. But if you can imagine yourself being sent to Bari, being
right?
put on trial in they're speaking Barese dialect. I mean, I can't imagine the torture and the fear. But I'm
No,
just wondering when did we, I mean, even you go for a driver's license now, they have to provide translation for you.
that's
I
the thing.
just,
Like, I'm
does
sorry.
anyone know when that happened?
I want to see if I can add in a picture that it's not in the book. Um, of Sabella that I just she looks so anguished, and when you were talking about just how afraid she might have been, and that how scary it would be if it happened to any of us.
It'd be
Um,
terrifying. I can't even imagine.
Let me see. I'm gonna see if I can just make a little
Did
screen.
did you think I had those same thoughts when the women was it Amanda, somebody, she was in Perugia and she was convicted of killing her roommate.
Oh, Amanda Fox. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And
and
Amanda
she,
Knox. Amanda
right,
Knox.
Knox,
Yeah.
exactly. And, you know, she was in Italy, maybe she spoke Italian, but still, I mean,
She did at the end.
when I was living there, I mean, any contact I had to have with the polizia or the questura was terrifying. I knew Italian, but I don't know their Italian. The legal, I don't know. So I was wondering for Amanda, I mean, even though she knew the language, I thought at the time, what must that be like to be
You know,
actually
my brother-in-law lived in Pisa at the time.
in Pisa?
Um,
Okay,
yeah, which,
okay.
they weren't in the same city. But I remember him telling me that really the sentiment was very, very against Amanda and
Oh, I'll
very,
bet. I'll bet.
and he said, you can't bring it up because people are very upset. They feel like she did it and that, she's going to get away with it as an American. And
Mhm.
I remember thinking, oh, well, of course then she's guilty, which, turns out I
Right.
was quite wrong, had to learn. But I have read some of her articles. She was certainly fluent by the end because she was, I think, 7 years in prison before she got out.
Was it that long? I didn't remember.
It was pretty bad. Yeah, it was pretty bad. Sorry, my
Emily,
husband's home. So now the dogs are
Yeah.
running back and forth, going to go check on him and see what, if dinner can apply to them as
Yeah.
well.
I,
I mean, thank you so much for your time.
Yes, yes. Well,
If,
I should.
does anyone else, I mean, if there are other questions, now's the
um,
time, folks.
Just Jenny, one thing I just want to jump in there. I belong to a group, it's an international group of psychologists. And
Mm,
this international group of psychologists is very active at the moment at, talking about how psychological aid could help the immigrants coming in. And not only that, but they're working with linguists
Mhm.
and the role of language and translation and mediazione linguistica in this. So this is what is currently happening in the worldwide scene. Now, the laws being passed about being, having psychological aid and linguistic aid, I'm not familiar with, but this is what is going on. And there is this international movement of these psychologists who are currently working with between psychology and psychological aid and linguistic aid for foreigners coming to any country, Italy in
Mhm.
this case for us, but for any countries. Yeah, there's this movement, this is in the air at the moment.
I have a question that keeps coming up most every book that we've read. There's such violence within the families,
Yeah, it was, wasn't
and
there?
it's such a different, I mean, our conception of the Italian family is just opposite from what we read. I mean, and you talk to Italians and they get teary-eyed talking about their children or their father or their mother of all things, and the hatred and in this family. And I don't think they're the only family because we keep running into it in most everything that we read. But does anybody have any theories about, you know,
I mean, I
life beating particularly? I mean, it's amazing. Is it the time? Was the wife beating going on in the 20s in our country or?
Oh, sure. I mean, that's why all these like women were, primarily up until this point, there were very weak domestic violence laws. And so when a woman killed in self-defense, usually didn't get past the coroner's jury. And so what was notable at the time was the McGinnis sisters who come up right before Sabella, where they were guilty. They weren't sorry. She did it to get rid of her husband because she had a boyfriend she liked better. And the fact that she was acquitted, and then you had, this was happening a few too many times, and that's why the prosecutors zoned in on Sabella. And they convinced themselves that she did it, but more importantly, they wanted to be able to tell the press, we got her, right? Same with Kitty Mom, right? There was no evidence that Kitty Mom, night watchman, after her and her boyfriend tried to rob up the factory, he was dead, but there were three adults present. Who was to blame? Kitty got life in prison. They were tired of women getting away with murder. Um, and so usually, though, to answer your question, usually if it was domestic violence, it wouldn't go past the coroner's jury. You know, they would have witnesses who say this is who he was, this is what they did.
Mhm.
It was self-defense. But it's interesting. I remember my great aunt, she's actually my husband's great aunt. She I dedicated the book to her. She was very, very important to me. We lost her in 2022. She was born in 1926 in Tuscany, in a very small town outside of Emilie Lucca called Pelagio. And um, it was, she saw a lot there. And I remember her telling me after she read the part about where Francesco and Michael got into the physical fight. She remembers seeing the sons and the fathers fighting. She remembers that from her youth. Um,
There was
and
plenty of that in this story also.
yes, yeah, and she said it reminded her of that. You know,
Was there, do you think there more physical violence in the Italian family, which is extremely contrary to how we picture Italian families?
I mean that's a good question. I just don't know. I mean, I don't know if Dominic, if you're aware, I couldn't tell you. Mm,
When I was growing up, there used to be fights at weddings, and uh, when my parents used to fight like cats and dogs, uh, and we didn't think it was unusual, but it's the immigrant experience had a lot of pressures on it. There was a lot of anxiety created by all of the whole experience, and they tended to take it out on each other. Uh, there's a lot of stress going on, and I wouldn't be surprised if there was some violence.
somebody
Well,
fought at my wedding. Oh my God, I'd be so mad, and I would hold that grudge for the rest of my life.
oh, wouldn't, yes.
Well, standards are different, but
We
now,
all, we have, I have my, everybody knows that my family history is not Italian, Scandinavian German. And my family I'm like only second generation from those people that came here. But the Scandinavians and the Germans they're not emotional people. So what they would do is they just stop talking to somebody.
Hmm.
I never was a witness to any physical violence, but there would always be, oh no, we aren't talking to Aunt Hulda. Nobody's talked to her for 10 years or, so they ostracize because they're not physical people. They don't show emotion. So, but our family had a lot of all the same, they came to Chicago and had all the same issues that people were having on Taylor Street, but because their culture is so different about not being emotional, which
Mhm.
causes all kind of other problems. So no, I just wonder that, and this is so bad in this book with, and the son even at one point saying he doesn't love his mother. I,
Yeah, that
I
was
didn't,
really,
I
yeah.
didn't know there was an Italian male who ever said those words.
I,
Uh,
that was that was interesting. Like when the first book first came out, and I would get invited to book clubs. A lot of times it would be like women in my age group where I knew somebody and they all had children at home and they're like, I just can't handle that part. Where he said he didn't love her, that they had a hard time with
Yeah,
what he did to
right.
her. He spent a good portion of the 1920s in prison for his own crimes. Um,
Mhm.
I did meet Sabella's granddaughter, came to one of my events and she was really great. And then the that man James, the oldest son, because I think he was in prison, he ended up moving to Michigan. He got married and then he had kids later. So his kids were like born in the 30s or 40s. They were older when he was older when they were born. So his grandson is like in my age group and he actually emailed me and said, like my dad can't wait to read the book. I was like, I don't know.
Mm.
Don't have your dad read about James in this book. Don't do it. This is skip this one. You guys
Yeah.
don't have to read this.
I think because there's anthropological documentation and writing on topics of particularly the history of the tarantella, which um, is not this tourist dance that we see films
Really?
of, that the
Really?
history of the tarantella is women who would be who would, and I'm really paraphrasing, would sequester themselves for any number of reasons. Someone would bring them to the church and they would go in groups. There's film documentation of this, which I'm happy to post, that actually a Mexican anthropologist documented. But the idea of abuse of women, the tarantella was part of, and this is years ago, right? Was part of protecting themselves that way, and also the reverence for the Virgin Mary. It's there are a lot of different levels there, and that the Virgin Mary for women who were in abusive households, and I mean, probably now, right? Women who are in abusive households, that's their patron saint, right?
Mhm.
That's who will take care of them. So there's an anthropological lineage that is
Mhm.
attached to violence against women, certainly.
Well, I should wind down.
Yes. In fact, this has been great.
You guys so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank
Oh, thank you.
you.
Everybody.
Okay, bye-bye.
And
Oh, Emily, it was very
we,
nice. Ciao.
yes, we still have more, which is great because Rosie has something that she's going to read that's actually related to this topic. So I think this is a great way to close. And maybe you can, introduce this in whatever way you would like. And I mean, I'm sure that we have responses to this too, which we may even have time for. So with that, I am going to share my screen. I said with great confidence here. Let me.
You've done a fine job so far. We appreciate it.
Oh,
Thank you,
Okay.
Jenny. You're a miracle worker, I said last time. It's
There
true.
we go. Okay, I'm going to do this.
Okay. The ugly prey brought up this idea for me to want to share with you an exceptional experience that I had at school. It was the year 1997, an unforgettable year for many reasons. And I had among my 5 classes of high school for my teaching of English before I became a principal in 2015. That was the year 1997, a problem class. It was a junior high school class, and they just misbehaved in so many ways. We teachers were desperate, didn't know what to do. So one of the students came up. She was currently an engineer, and her name was Erica. She said, Teacher Professoressa, why don't we write to Amnesty International? And I said, why? Well, there is this case of Joseph Odell, and we could ask to write to him, which we did. We wrote, actually, that we was I. I wrote to Joseph and I said, I'm a teacher of this class and so. Could you help me? These students are running very high risk. I mean, if we start this way and they don't get themselves an education and start behaving, starting from, their conduct, I don't know where to go. Surprisingly, we were on vacation and they called me at school and they said, well, you have a letter that, and handwriting of Joseph Odell. Immediately, what I read in the back here, the Department of Corrections has neither censored nor inspected this item, therefore, and then it goes, the Regional Director, Virginia Department of Corrections. I said, is it possible that Joseph Odell answered a little provincial teacher from Italy in person? And look at it's pink. He chose pink.
Really?
And this
And
is
he's a
really,
convict? He's a convict
yes,
in
an
India?
historical document.
Where'd you get pink stationery?
This I wonder, but this is his
Or,
own handwriting. And I said, well, this is a miracle. Plus, it was, well, the first thing I'm going to do in September is read to this class, unusual class, which turned out, I must say that after the reading of this letter, they actually changed. He really helped me a lot. He was on death row, and he is currently buried in Palermo. And he wanted this because one of the few people that he communicated was the Pope. So I don't know if we were second, third, 10th, or whatever in line, but very exceptionally. So I thought that I should share it with you to give you an idea of what death row is really all about, from his own eyewitness. So may I read it to you, Jenny? Is it
Sure.
okay? Then if you're interested in receiving it, I can, just have it scanned and send it to all of you. So Joseph R. Richard Odell III, Boynton, Virginia, USA, May 27th, 1997.
Whoops.
The poem that you have received was a poem that I wrote after he was executed, and it belongs to a collection of poetry, enjoying poetry too. Dear teachers, student representatives, and students, thank you so very, very much for your sweet cards. We sent him letters of Naples. Actually, I got a few. So on one of them, I wrote, Vedi Napoli e poi muori. You see Naples and then you die, but you mustn't die was the message. You have to come here and see us. So thank you for your sweet cards, your beautiful letter, and the cassette tape. I also thought we could send him like some audio tapes of typical Neapolitan songs like Pino Daniele and stuff like that. I was not allowed, he wrote this in brackets, to have the cassette tape, but I'll have it sent to my friend Lori. Lori, just by the way, has written a book about him, and it's called, I wrote it somewhere. Well, anyway, okay, she's written a book about this, and she was his defense lawyer who proposed the examination of DNA. I think this was never done anyway, but they secretly married. So I was not allowed to have the cassette tape, but I'll have it sent to my friend, actually girlfriend, Lori, and lawyer, who will play it over the telephone for me. So he couldn't hear it personally, but over the telephone. I thank all of you for thinking about me and caring about me. It's refreshing because in the USA, everyone is apathetic and cold. It is wonderful that you respect human life and are against the death penalty. I would like for you to also add to that that you are against all injustice as well. As Dr. Martin Luther King said before his assassination, injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere. Though you are all very young, and I know are innocent to the horrors and depravities that go on in parts of the world that you do not know about, I want you to know that sometimes death is preferable to life. In my case, I am totally innocent, yet I have spent 17 and a half years on death row. Death would have been much better than the horror and suffering I have endured. I have seen 36 friends and acquaintances murdered by my governments. They were not innocent, but my government killed them to show that killing is wrong. That's a very sad and wrong message. On death row, prison awaiting death, he explains in brackets, I am deprived of the simplest things. No human touch for one thing. I have to visit my loved ones through a bulletproof glass and talk over a telephone, to see the sun and the moon, the stars. I'm never allowed. Imagine being locked in your bathroom 24 hours a day, having a 1 inch mattress on a steel bed, eating food that isn't fit for human consumption, having chains on your legs, hands, and waist anytime you're taken from your cell, an electric shock belt put on you that will send 15,000 volts through you, causing you to lose all bodily function control. Screaming inmates 24 hours a day, some chained to a steel bed with no clothes on, left in their own waste. Some went insane. Some have gone should have been. And those of us who haven't, we bear the torture. I could go on and about the deprivations, but please never take your freedom for granted. Once you lose it and are subjected to the cruelties of prison or jail, you are never the same again. What I would like to teach you is to never, he underlines, allow the slightest injustice by anyone go without correction. Obey the law always, but fight injustice with the law on your side. If you close your eyes to injustice and corruption, it will escalate. It will become exponential and soon inundate every facet of society. That is what has happened in America. Always believe in God and look to Him for guidance and direction. Believe me, God has carried me through this hellish 17 and a half years of torture. Sorry, that was 12 and a half years of torture and suffering. When I was first arrested and falsely accused, I was a robust and healthy bodybuilder and weightlifter. The photo of me on internet shows what I looked like. Now I am but a shell. My spirit is strong. My will is like steel. But due to the lack of proper food and nutrition, I have become something I do not recognize in the mirror. Even though I have been terribly wronged, treated inhumanely, subjected to the cruelest of tortures, my spirit keeps me going, and sweet, caring people like you keep me going. You edify in my heart, my soul, my mind, and body that there are good people in the world. Sister Helen Prejean and my precious Lori have been such a blessing to me. His Holiness Pope John Paul II has been a blessing to me. All of the Italian Parliament has been a blessing to me and still are. Sister Helen Prejean and I are good friends. She is such a sweet and wonderful person. She has a beautiful personality. There is going to be a movie made, yeah, which was Dead Man Walking, starring
Ah,
Sean Penn, yeah, and Sister Helen Prejean. I forgot the actress there, but it's a famous actress. And a book is going to be written. I hope each of you will see the movie or read the book, which I then showed the
yeah.
students. It's not that I'm something special, because I'm not. But it's because my life story will change the lives of some who view the movie and certainly has changed the lives of my students. I don't care about fame and glory, nor do I care about all the money coming from any of this. I care about human beings, life, and the beautiful things that God created for us to enjoy, not to destroy. I am a simple man with simple tastes. My life's dream is to marry a wonderful woman, have a child, and as a person who loves all life, I have a passion for dogs and cats. So I'd like to have plenty of them around me and my little family. A little quote just came to my mind that I would like to share with you. In prayer, it is better to have a heart without words than words without a heart. John Bunyan. The Italian people have been wonderful to me. I've never seen nor heard of such love and compassion coming from a nation. Be very proud to be Italian because the world, for the most part, has become very cruel and cold towards other humans. Italy has not. Italy is the quote, salt of the earth. I may die before this letter reaches you. No, he died a month later. I just received your letter today. And he wrote immediately. And it took almost 30 days to reach me. The court's decision on my case will be rendered by the time you receive this. You will know because whatever happens with my case will be on the news. Just know if I do have to die, that I am innocent, that your letter and cards to me, it makes me cry, gave my tortured life some joy. Thank you so very much for caring about me. I wish you all a wonderful and happy life. Please remember, right always wins over wrong, and love always wins over hate. Sometimes we don't see this, but the law of reciprocity is an immutable law, and it works 100% of the time. Even though I may die, and this seems to be the contrary to what I just said, it isn't that way at all. I may have to be the sacrificed lamb that saves countless others. So right wins over wrong in the end. It's not the halftime scare that counts, but the scare at the end of the game. I'm concluding. I would like to leave you with one of my favorite quotes. The balls of sight are formed, that one man's eyes are spectacles to another to read his heart within. Ben Jonson, please excel at all you do in life. He's speaking to the students. If you fail, and the students, every one of them, we collected over like 200 signatures, besides the class concerned. If you fail, do not give up. Perseverance is virtuous. Pressures of life from teachers, parents, and friends are signs of loving and caring. He was really helping me. Please accept these endeavors as gestures of love and caring. As you are so young, you may not understand the wisdom of this, but in later years you will. Reap while you are young the benefits of those who are older and much more experienced. I love and care about each and every one of you. I read and touched each signature. May God bless you and give you your heart's desire. Love and prayers, Joseph Odell, Death Row, P.O. Box 500, Boynton, Virginia 23197, USA. Ah,
Wow. And that was Susan Sarandon who was in that film.
Susan Sarandon,
Mm.
and who was that Sean Penn who was
That's what
playing
you
the,
said. Yeah.
yeah,
And
but
it's funny, I remember her in it.
yeah, he wasn't really Joseph Odell. He was somebody else, but the character of Joseph Odell was portrayed in this fictitious character.
Yeah.
Yeah, reading that letter right now, and thinking, you know, what to, however innocent or guilty, these people or whatever their story, but what are the conditions in prison? One. Secondly, the intelligence of this man. He's quoting for a teacher needing help authors like Ben Jonson and John Bunyan, makes quite sense. And then I care, I mean, and his emotional part, I care and love. I've touched every one of your signatures.
Yeah.
I mean, in a way, his letter helped us, but we also helped him. And the point is caring. And then in that poem, how can you consciously kill somebody on death row? And you're talking about a Department of Corrections. We talk about corrections at school, but we don't kill the students because the students have to be rehabilitated. And I said this elsewhere. I was a principal who suspended the students, but with love and care, talking to them right in their eyes and asking for help of all kinds, getting the parents on my side and say, we really care. Your kids are going to end up in jail and wrong or dead maybe one day. So let us do our part. And you have to be complacent with this because we care and love your kids. And the point is that they have to change. So while suspended, they're going to have plenty of homework. I'm exaggerating this. Sometimes I assigned Aristotle to junior high schools. They said, Aristotle, oh, you start from the physics and go all the way to the politics. Well, that's going to take years. Well, you got 15 years to the 15 days suspension. Pretty busy. So, and if you deserve, maybe you'll be promoted. You can come back when you're rehabilitated through your study and education. That's our message here. Study and education. Because if you study and you're educated, you can think twice before you do something wrong. There's the law and plus there's the moral aspect. I kept close and strange to say, but these kids loved me because I had the janitors, telling me, what did they say about, oh, they love you. They said, she acts like that, but she's pretty bona. She's a bona. Oh,
Yeah.
that's nice. And I'm bona, but you just let me know because then, in case they don't get the message.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I thought I could share this to you,
Well, thank you, because it's very appropriate, and it also pointed to the book, which mentioned that the conditions for men in prison at that time were much worse than the conditions for women. That Sabella was able to walk around, and she had much more freedom in her environment than the men did. I don't know how much that has changed. I actually have a friend who works with women in prison currently. And so that's actually really interesting here in New Mexico. I don't know what our plans are for the next meetings. I'm leaving that all up to you. I'm happy to assist in any way that I can. And so, I'm leaving that up to you. I'm just sort of here to hold a container.
Jenny, grazie, Jenny. You conducted very, very well.
Well, my pleasure. My pleasure. So, shall we sign off? Are there any other things that anybody wants or needs to say?
So long, everyone.
Thank you, Jenny.
Okay, good night. You're all
Arrivederci,
very
Jenny.
welcome.
Un saluto affettuoso with all my heart. A presto.
Ciao,
Ciao,
ciao.
ciao. Good night. Ciao, ciao, ciao.